My name is Crystal Lightfoot. Pewo is my maiden name. I am an enrolled member of the Apache Tribe of Oklahoma, and I am also half Kiowa. Oral history tells us both the Apache Tribe of Oklahoma and the Kiowa Tribe originated very far north from Oklahoma, back to what is Canada, and the western areas, western provinces of Canada. And over time, over several hundred years, if not 1,000 years, our people eventually migrated to the central plains of the United States, and then eventually to the southern plains of the United States, and eventually being settled into a land of area which is now known as Oklahoma. Plain style star quilts evolved over probably the last 200 years, to my understanding. My family, we participate in powwow dancing as well as ceremonial dancing within our tribes, our area, and also travel extensively across the United States for various powwow celebrations. And somewhere along the way, the gift giving portion, as well as the just the high honor of a giveaway to a person, evolved over time to what became quilts. Some blankets and quilts are made of wool. Some of them are very expensive. And then after the introduction of fabrics and then eventually sewing machines and sewing techniques, then these star quilts became widespread among our people. There are many tribes that have a very sacred connection to their quilt making. My personal knowledge and experience with the quilts handed down from my mother, which for her, it was also a part of gift giving and bestowing upon people for, high honors, as well as the giveaways within the powwow circle. So I know that I may have been about 10 years old in the mid 80s. I was able to witness family members coming to our home, and they would have quilting parties. Like on Saturday mornings, they'd have a little brunch and put some quilts up on racks, and then all the ladies would take turns and hand quilt the quilts. Somewhere along the way, these quilt designs came to what was like a block pattern, what they call a block pattern. Then they did a log cabin pattern, and then eventually the star quilts. So one of my mom's cousins helped her, and they figured out their own methods of making these star quilts. So I think I witnessed my mom making star quilts for at least 10 years before I ever tried one. So I think I was around the age of, I don't know how old I was, but in 1997, I made my very first star quilt by myself, just from watching and assisting my mother. So I think another important element to understand about the star quilts is that the shape of it is an actual star. So the pattern that I use is an 8-pointed star, which is any star, be it an 8-pointed or a 4-point star, and even 5-point stars, are prevalent in probably every Native American tribe, that as far as I understand. So the significance of stars not only kind of derives from the sun, which, it lights our universe as we know it, but the star also is going to be found in many, many tribes, maybe their creation story. And it also can come up in tales that are, used to teach lessons. But it's a star or the constellations is always going to come up in pretty much every tribe that I know of. So it's kind of like a very prevalent symbol that comes out. And it not only comes out with the quilt making, but it comes out on designs on our clothing, as well as into the beadwork that we use to to adorn our regalia. My work with the Star Quilts is personally meaningful to me because it is a craft that was handed down from my mother. So she has passed away a couple of years ago, but over time, my sister learned to make the Star Quilts, as well as my daughter is now learning. So my daughter was fortunate enough to have some guidance from my mother as well in creating her first Star Quilt. So the connection with the sewing and the quilts in general it's very important to me because of the relationship that I was able to have with my mother, just by her working on a quilt. So many of my earliest memories was sitting and visiting with her across the table as she worked. We would talk about the day, we would talk about plans, and then along the way, then she started to direct me to cut things out for her or to assist her. So it's just over a very, very close bond of where this came from between my mother and myself, and then now myself and my sister, and now to my daughter. The connection with it is because it's so time consuming, it gets very challenging. Takes me 10 hours from the very beginning to the very end of making one quilt. And there's times whenever you get tired or something's not working out, maybe frustrated, but once you overcome that challenge and you complete the quilt, it's just like a very satisfactory feeling. Most recently, I created a baby quilt for a child who is only a few months old. But with that goes into the care and attention of what basically prayers for this child over, its lifetime. So that for me is a very important aspect of it. Quilts of honor that are going to go to a specific person. You can also think of that person along the way, things that they've done, the impact on people, and then just the honor of, somebody's having something special created for them. So that is a very important aspect for me to be able to do them. I just don't get enough time to make as many as I want. The basics for the Star Quilt construction starts out with, in the quilting terms, we call it a diamond. I have a sister who is a teacher, and my daughter is a teacher. They both teach in public school education. So I was very, they informed me that the shape of this diamond is a rhombus, because my question started out simply is this a parallelogram or is this a quadrilateral? So it opens up a giant debate amongst us, and they're like, well, it's both, but technically it's a rhombus. So I think it's really cute to be able to kind of relate the Star Quilt diamond shape into terminology that we once learned and I haven't used in many, many years. But so we start with the basic diamond or rhombus shape, and it has to be cut at a specific angle, which is a 45-degree angle. So you'll end up with the 45-degree angle on each side of the diamond. And my theory is that the more accurate you cut this diamond, the easier the whole quilt is going to go together. So I made errors where I've cut something too short or cut it too long, and it's going to make a challenge that you might not be able to correct it or make it come out in the end. So having this shape and understanding how the fabric moves with the shape will give you a better understanding once you go to construct the entire quilt. One fascinating thing that I like in looking at a Star Quilt when it's completed is that in the end, you're basically creating artwork in a 360 view. So backing up from that, when you're constructing the Star Quilt or the star for the quilt top, you have two halves. So I like to call it, you got to make that 180-degree angle. And I think it's cute because really a 180-degree angle is a straight line, but I love the thought of calling it something that it technically is. And then backing up from that, I'm going backwards and constructing the star in my mind. So prior to having your two halves, you would actually have fourths. So each of those fourths are at a 90-degree angle or a right turn. So I love to use that terminology whenever I do teach my students, whether they're experienced sewers or new to it, regardless of age. I do love to describe the terminology, and once you see the angles coming together, and it eventually will make this artwork that is connected in a 360-degree angle. So going backwards once again, before you get to your fourths of the star, you'll actually have a 1/8, because like I said, we're making an 8-pointed star. So taking these rhombus shapes and connecting them in very precise measurement sewing, you end up with 1/8 of a diamond in your very first construction. So after that, you're going to repeat that same exact setup 7 more times. Once you get the 8 pieces and you sew it all together, then you'll end up with the star. So that's one concept that I really try to get people to understand, and getting down to those precise measurements. And we have a lot of people that, they pick up on it and they get it. And when you get it, that's kind of the best feeling that you can get, is when your student gets it, and then when you get to the end, the joy and the happiness that shows on their face is just the most priceless thing ever. So I like doing this part of it because of all those challenging aspects. It helps others to understand, and they're learning and they're growing. And just like riding a bike, once you learn to sew this, once you learn to construct it, once you learn to finish it, you can't unlearn it. And you might not be a star quilt maker, but you're definitely going to learn something that can apply to something else.